although the world is completely polarized today, it is polarized on one hand, but it is very depoliticized on the other hand. You would find more youngsters. The difference between emergency era Indira Gandhi and Modi is that a normal dictator and a fascist are very distinct. When there were slew of corruption charges, the India Against Corruption movement was its high. Modi was able to tap into the imaginations of the vast majority of newly educated OBC, SCs, because there is an image that is built in India that the problems they face is not because of caste, but because of the superficial reasons of corruption. Hi guys. First of all, thank you for having me on board, and for that, thanks for considering me worthy of giving a talk here. And before we begin, I would like to congratulate you guys on the federal court verdict in favor of the anti-discrimination bill. Yeah, I mean the work you guys do there is adding to the inspiration for our struggle here, because like the series that you have, Global Perspectives, we are all connected through this web of caste now. So whatever, like Baba Sahib would say, how much ever bricks that you take off those palaces of castes there, it reflects here too. So congratulations for that. Let me get into my talk with telling you guys the purpose of this. So this could be a peculiar topic, role of caste and the rise of right wing, because on one level it might sound like something very stating the obvious. I mean, right wing has to go with caste. I mean, how can a right wing can not be casteist? Or on the other hand, it might be puzzling. So I would like to briefly talk about why I chose this topic and what we are going to deal with here. So usually when we talk of caste in general discourse, we as in not the people in this talk, generally the discourse outside about caste is generally very static. Static in the sense people talk about caste as though right from the 2000 odd years it originated to now, caste is still the same. The same four varnas, same mechanism of caste and stuff like that is almost static. And little more informed people talk about caste and with a slight upgrade, probably as a punctuated line. Basically, the Varna system started. There was Buddha. After a long period of time, there was Bhakti movement. There was Basavanna. There was Ambedkar, Periyar. I mean, there are punctuated intervals, but it is still a straight line. But caste doesn't act like that. Caste has always been dialectical. By dialectical, what I mean is what we imagine as a linear line is not a linear line. It's almost like a double helical structure of a DNA. That is the anti-caste forces and the casteist forces. I mean, caste hegemonical forces have always been fighting with each other, one getting on top of another over time period. So what has been happening is whatever anti-caste throws at the casteist hegemonical forces, the hegemonical forces find new ways in the next century or next decade and come on top with a new form of, you know, expanding their tentacles. So, for example, the caste. I mean, you guys. I hear from your host that you guys have had the pleasure of having a talk from journalist Manoj Mitta. When you read his book Caste Pride, you get a totally different picture of caste compared to what we have right now. So caste wasn't the same pre-independence era. It wasn't the same between 1947 to 1991, and it isn't the same after 1990. So dialectically, caste keeps changing its behavior. Although it retains its kernel of the Varna system, of the Brahminical order, it changes the forms that it operates in. which is why if you see Foxconn, a couple of years ago, there was a big controversy about Foxconn. Foxconn, as you know, the electronic assemblage company, which is hailed as a large employment provider in Tamil Nadu, ran into a controversy when there was a news that Foxconn keeps rejecting married women. First, the allegation was that Foxconn hires only women for the low-paying jobs, and then the allegation strengthened as Foxconn company keeps rejecting married women. But what all the news headlines missed was Foxconn consciously goes to villages, hires women from OBC in Tamil Nadu's term, MBC, which is most backward class, and SC women from very, very poor families. Because these families, these women are the ones that can be exploited to the maximum extent possible in the social setting. So if you see, compare it to the landlords in Maharashtra who hire women from Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh, and some of the surrounding states from the same sort of most backward class and SC women as agricultural laborers, wanting them or forcing them to remove their uteruses before coming to work. So caste, even in 21st century, realigns itself so that it serves the purpose of a feudal lord and the most advanced of industry like Foxconn. So that is how we need to view caste. And the derivative thing of this is when we ask to talk about caste, we are very comfortable talking about how it was in the past. Also, the conservatives keep saying caste is a thing of past. We are generally just one layer above in the sense when we are asked to talk about the mechanism of caste, how it is operating, we usually give references from the past. We really in the general discourse we really don't have theorizations as to how caste is acting today. Probably it is these are sparse theories as to how caste operates in literature, how caste operates in academia, all these sporadic writings which are not connected in a general theory of caste for today. Uh, of course, there are threads that connect discriminations in different places, like the IT industry, the cinema industry, and all that. But there is not a general theory of how caste works today, which adds to the uh, limitations of how we are going to explain the rise of right wing in terms of caste. Which is why we see a surge of casteist views after 2014, not just in India. I am guessing you guys would be witnessing that in the US as well. Although I have never traveled to US, from the reports I read, from the views that I hear from comrades there, caste has always been there. Just like in India, it's not like it began in 2014. The Indian state was intrinsically casteist from the beginning, from its advent in 1947. But you see a qualitative change from 2014. And I believe it is the same case in the Western countries that Indian upper caste have migrated to. They have always been implicitly casteist in their conduct of every day. But in 2014, this got uh, an upgrade with organizational power, the resources it needs, and a multiple number of ways that it can reach en masse. So but the view that we have is very reductionist. See, when we think of, say, Congress versus BJP or any liberal party versus BJP, like AAP versus BJP, the comparison, the view that, we are imbibed with this, a sophisticated casteist was a brash, rural, feudal mindset casteist. That is the reductionist view we have of right wing and the caste system. What we need to understand is it is very easy to say, there is a catch line that people keep parroting often, which is fascism uses every sort of uh, exploitative structure in the society. So it uses caste as if fascism is something not within, but without. And it just uses caste, gender, and whatnot. as some sort of extras. But what we are going to see here is caste had been a building block of Indian variety of fascism. So that is what we are going to see in this talk. Now, before getting to the crux of it, we have to see the extent of what caste has bestowed on this new age right. For that, we have to look at the newly attained ability of the state. We have to investigate the length and breadth of it to understand why caste plays such an important role. You see, in 1991, when Babur Masjid was demolished, this was the title. This was the cover page of the India Today magazine. Contrast that with the cover when Ram Temple was inaugurated. This, I mean, if there is any metaphor for the mathematical expression of 180-degree, this would be the 100% match. This is not just in the magazine. I didn't show it to, show the representation of how it is in the media. In 1990, early 1990s, people were ashamed to say that they were supportive of destruction of Babri Masjid. Even if they supported, they had an inkling of shame. They had some sort of moral righteousness that was keeping them from expressing open affiliations to this. Of course, there is a small section of people, there was a small section of people that were lauding it openly, but the vast majority of public consciousness was against it, or at least declared to be against it in out in the open. But on the other hand, when you see the Round Table inauguration, every WhatsApp group, every apartment group, every sports club, every sort of group that you can name shared creatives about it, shared news about it, even bullied the individuals in the group who are not responsive. I mean, who are not responding to these messages positively, not just negatively. If they were silent, they were bullied to respond immediately with some sort of superlatives about Ram Temple and stuff like that. So this is the new ability of state. This is not some ability that was there before. So I'll just quote few examples before we get the full picture of what what is it? What is the maximum extent of the capability of the state? So this slide was made a few days ago. So I have to add the latest news by words. So in 1980s, when 1990s, when Bal Thackeray spoke about Muslims in bad light, just in one speech, he was banned from campaigning and contesting in elections for 6 years by the election commission. But now, Modi in 2024, and this report is actually underestimating it. The actual estimate comes up to about 180 speeches of Modi in the run-up to 2024, in which he gave Islamophobic speeches, but no action was taken against him. I was intending to show the extent of leeway this state gets from election commission. Now the latest news is that the election commission removed 65 lakh people from Bihar's voters list, and many of them, most of them are either minorities, Dalit voters, OBC voters, and migrant workers. There was a survey a couple of weeks back which said 78% of Dalit voters say their voters in the threat of being removed. So that is the extent of leeway they get in electoral politics. This is public consciousness. This is electoral politics. And if you see, I just quoted an example from a Tamil movie which goes by the name Varumai Niram Sivappu, where rough translation is red is the color of poverty. So this movie was made in the late 70s or early 80s. Why I was showing this as an example was in 1974-73, when India had just 4% of 4.5% of unemployment, raising from 3%, we had massive protests throughout the country. But now the unemployment rate is somewhere between 7 and 9. You would see no such protests in India. Part of this reason is with the growth of right-wing consciousness, with the growth of caste consciousness, one tends to blame their karma or whatever, or the external other that these people are creating an enemy out of for unemployment rather than the state. So this is just, I'm just quoting one reason. We'll see much more reasons of why this is happening, but this is the new ability of the state. The new ability, different from here, is here the state can manipulate anything, the people will accept it. Here, people, the state can do something very outrageous, still be convincing. And here, the state can forego of its responsibilities in every which way, still the public will accept it. Now, since we are not even constrained within India for this, this is an open secret that every one of you probably knows. Wherever Modi ji goes, Adani gets a wind power project, Adani gets a port, Adani gets some sort of electricity project, coal mines in Australia, solar power project in Sri Lanka. This is this has been the new capability of the state, because in Congress era or even in the Vajpayee era, if a deal is made, and not just one, any big capitalist gets a favor from the prime minister or some deal just handed out to them, it would have been subject to a lot of scrutiny. For example, when Manmohan Singh signed a deal with Bush on nuclear deal, it was subject to scrutiny for months, and the communist parties got out of the alliance just opposing the deal. But now this is like between 2015 and 2017, Modi went on foreign trips, almost like 60 or 70 foreign trips, bagging dozens of deals for Ambani and Adani. Nobody questions it. No, I mean, nobody questions as in the opposition raises it once in a while, but this is not seeping into the public consciousness, or this is not entailing any sort of action as opposed to the all empowered state. Now, this is another case of judiciary where judges openly declare their allegiance to the ruling party. You might wonder how it is all connected to caste. Let me, when it opens, it will all make sense, I assure you. Now, what has been the trend in the last 5 years is that judges who give favorable verdicts to BJP get post-retirement jobs. Judges who quit their jobs early in, like the one in Calcutta, Abhijit Gangotpatyay, openly declares that they were associated with RSS right from the beginning. All throughout the time, they were giving verdicts against the opposition parties, whether it's TMC, DMK, AAP, Congress, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, or whichever party it is, Samajwadi Party. And this has been a new trend in judiciary. And most of the judges who gave some sort of verdicts against BJP were not elevated to High Court or Supreme Court, or they were sidelined. All of this is happening. Still, the what I would like to contrast is when Justice Pardiwala spoke one word against reservation in 2003, there was an impeachment proceeding against him, and it hurt his career a lot. And he had to apologize, he had to take it back and stuff like that. Now this has become rampant. If you read the judgments of Gujarat High Court and Allahabad High Court, judges are openly reading out of Manusmriti day in and day out. There was a case a couple of years ago when a minor was raped. She was pregnant. The judge was advising her to read Manusmriti so that she feels better. So this has become a new order. Not that it wasn't present before 2014, but this has become the majority of judges now. It has become the norm for judges to speak in this language so that they are seen favorably by the ruling establishment. So this is the new ability of the state. Now, why caste? Why not other explanations? I mean, what is fascism? What makes Modi fascist, not Manmohan Singh or Vajpayee? Say any other BJP leader before him, or not just him, the party as it stands today. The usual limited explanations are hyper nationalism and religious extremism. We usually think hyper nationalism and mixed together with the religious extremism forms what we call as Fascism. But that is very limiting, that is very reductionist too. If hyper-nationalism was the reason, why didn't we have, or why didn't Vajpayee have the capability of all that I showed after Pokhran test? If you were, if you were an adult during these times, you would probably remember how it was. The tension between India and Pakistan was at an all-time high because we were on a nuclear race. And especially after Kargil war, all of us would remember that we collected money from our parents, we collected money from our neighbors, sent it to army men fighting the Kargil war. Nationalism was at all-time peak. So if nationalism was the explanation, then Vajpayee should have had it. If religious extremism was the reason, the time during Rath Yatra, the time between Rath Yatra and Babri Masjid demolition should have been the right time for fascism in India, correct? Because this was the time where not just religious extremism and sentiments, thousands of people were slaughtered during this Rath Yatra and the riots followed following Babri Masjid. The fact that it didn't happen, the fact they were at a much weaker position than today, tells us that these are not adequate explanations. On top of that, if you take caste-wise, the BJP back then had three Brahmins at their forefront: Murli Manohar Joshi, Vajpayee, and Advani. They were all Brahmins in ritualistic status, in social status. These Brahmins were above Modi ji, and not just that, they had a much better image makeup as an intellectual. If you see during Karan Thapar's interview, Modi had to walk out because of his limitations in handling the press or his intellectual dearth or whatever. On the other hand, Advani had the intellectual capability to toy with Karan Thapar. So he had a better reception among the so-called critics, political analysts, and all that. Vajpayee had a much better international appeal than Modi. Modi, until he became prime minister, he was denied visa. There were reports about him in the UK about Gujarat and stuff like that. But Vajpayee had a very good international appeal because even before he was a prime minister, he traveled the world as a person, as a politician, talking with other delegates. But none of these Brahmins had the capability as to carry out all that is happening today. What could be the reason? Why is caste the reason? And yeah, I had to throw in one more example. When this was in the late 90s, when Shiv Sena threatened that if Pakistan cricketers entered Wankhede Stadium, they would, they would face worse consequences. Back then, Advani had to go to the place that Pakistani players were staying and had to get them out to show the public that it was friendly to have a cricket match here. This was a bind that BJP was in. Today, BJP has no such forms. BJP can conduct matches in Ambedkar Motera Stadium and chant Jai Shri Ram at Pakistani players. And BJP did not have, BJP does not have to rely on other parties to get majority in 2014 or 2019. But if you see, Vajpayee had to rely on parties that are predominantly OBC and SC in 1999 to form a alliance and come to power. And to implement whatever a ruler wants, Indira Gandhi had to declare emergency, but Modi does not need to, because whatever Modi thinks or BJP thinks, India does. If you see, there were multiple train accidents followed by it. Nobody had to push people to form theories on possibilities of the loco pilot being Muslim. Nobody had to instigate youngsters in public to beat up Muslim old men or Dalit youngsters and so on. The BJP merely thinks India carries it out. Right. Now we have come to the crux of it, why this is happening. So I would like to recall two quotes by Baba Sahib Ambedkar to understand why this is happening. And we will go to specific epoch of when BJP utilized these two components. So you would know Baba Sahib's speech to the strikers in Bombay, where he said there are only two enemies for the working class in India. These are Brahmanism and capitalism. And there was this anecdote by Baba Sahib where he says, during the Constitution of the Assembly debates, in the preface, the famous politicians, like I think Petish or someone, and the group of them wanted to add Indian nation in place of India in the preface of the Constitution, in the preamble of the Constitution. And he said, no, I cannot allow that, because if we start believing that we are a nation, we are cherishing a great delusion. Because Baba Sahib believed India is not one nation. India is divided into thousands of castes as nations. Each caste acts as its own nation. Now, it is in the late 90s, BJP started rehearsing this. What happened was there was a crisis in the early 90s with regards to caste in the BJP. You see, BJP is just a political expression of RSS and dozens of organizations that it has. Correct? So RSS formed VHP in the 1960s, and well into mid 80s, they were very successful for the purpose they took. The purpose of VHP was to connect the priestly class, which is the Brahmins, the mutts, the religious temple trusts, and all that. They were able to get lots of mutts and temple trusts to sign on to VHP and allege their affiliation. So this project was successful. Now the next project was to bring foot soldiers for these projects into the fold of Hindutva. Foot soldiers means they mainly targeted OBCs and SCs, not even STs at this point, OBCs and some to some extent SCs. For this, they founded what is called the Bajrang Dal as the youth wing of VHP, quote unquote, to safeguard Hindus from imminent threat, which means unleashing violence on non-Hindus and whoever threatens this Varna order of Hinduism, even from within. So this project was successful to the extent that they could mobilize a lot of working class men from the OBC SC caste in participating in violence throughout the Rath Yatra and Babri Masjid demolition, and the riots followed. But the thing is, what they realized is, like I said, they still had to rely on other parties to form alliances. They recognized the fact that even though these castes were penetrated ideologically, ideologically in the sense not en masse, not qualitatively into the caste, as you know, the whole caste would start believing. Thousands of youngsters were recruited from these castes to the cause of violent militant Hindutva, but that wasn't sufficient. The political expression wasn't reflecting this, is what they realized. They still had to rely on parties that represent OBCs and SCs for political survival. So this was when BJP identified the crisis. The person who identified this crisis was Govindacharya. Govindacharya is a Tambram who was a hardcore RSS Hindutva guy who was also part of BJP, and this guy gave a recommendation to BJP. He, top leadership that, see, you guys are all Brahmins. I'm a Brahmin, so I understand how it goes. You guys are all Brahmins. Of course, you are using people in the lower rung of caste system as foot soldiers, but that is not enough. You need to start giving representations to these people in leadership for them to see this party as their own party. Of course, this wasn't paid heed to, and yeah, I mean, there were allegations leveled against him in other matters so that he stops speaking about this openly, and he was transferred to some other quarters for some petty work as opposed to some important political work in the Hindutva project. A funny thing happened in this meeting is that when Govindacharya got out of the meeting, uh, you can see how he is. He's a Tamil Brahmin, so his skin complexion reflects, an average South Indian. So the North Indian OBC and SC people in the BJP thought he is also some non-Brahmin because he looks dark. So they walked up to him and told him, "See, this is how they treat us." Us. They didn't know he was a Brahmin, and this is an anecdote that he tells the journalist, and it is in the book How BJP Wins by Prashant Jha. So here they tell him this has been the case for decades. We are silent always, and they express a lot of misgivings to him. So BJP, although they silent Govindacharya for this advice, they tried giving representation to Uma Bharati, Kalyan Singh, people who are non-Brahmins and traditionally viewed as lower caste by BJP, but these people predominantly came from landed caste. But still, this was a leap in the eyes of BJP's leadership. But the thing is, the public would always see Uma Bharati as an extension of Advani, Kalyan Singh as someone, although from a non-Brahmin caste, as someone who could be thrown under the bus when BJP was in trouble. So the BJP leadership largely remained Brahminical. Even today, it remains Brahminical. I'm saying literally just Brahmins in the 90s who showed a different path, who showed what Govindacharya was recommending was none other than Modi ji. So the term that we use here is, let me see, molecular permeation. This is the term that we have to uh, remember. So what has happened is, during Gujarat riots of 2002, what the world sees, what the liberal India usually sees is Hindus violence on Muslims in 2002. But what was peculiar in the violence in Gujarat in 2002 was that Modi demonstrated to BJP that he could rally people of all sections of caste in the militant Hindutva project, and also rally them to give him a stunning majority in election, because the election followed this riot. The BJP leadership thought this guy would get a total defeat, because the state did not see, not just the state, the nation did not see a riot, organized riot on such a scale in a long time. Usually, when such an organized riot, because anyone who was closely following the news, who was closely following the developments in the riots, knew how the state was so meticulously designed in such a way to carry out the violence to reap the maximum benefits in the eyes of the Hindutva militant project. So Modi proved that they can penetrate all sections of the caste, they can be engaged in this project, and also reap electoral benefits out of it. And not just that, what Modi demonstrated was, people thought such violence would shoo away the investors from the state, the so-called most industrialized state or potentially industrialized state. But even uh, the groups of industrialists sent a letter to Modi saying they're not having an investor summit that year in Gujarat because of the violence and so on and so on. What Modi did was completely opposite to what a traditional BJP leader would do. Modi ji founded the Vibrant Gujarat, which started in 2003, and invited. This is the first time you actually see Gautam Adani making a big appearance in public. She gathered whichever investor, whichever big firm that was ready to align with him in spite of this violence of rallying the whole bunch of syndicate Hindus. So from there, Modi ji demonstrated to people how Brahmanism and capitalism can go together, as Baba Sahib predicted. Now, from that, if you remember the Nandigram issue in West Bengal, where Tata was trying to set up the factory for nano, and there was police shooting. There was a lot of controversy. So Modi jumped on the wagon immediately to get Tata to, attract him with lots of soft loans, incentives spanning up to, I think, 4,000 crores. And this gave Modi an image of Virat Hindu as well as someone who is uh, uh, very industrious in what he does, and the future of India in the industrial sector. We have to understand what we mean by molecular permeation is what fascism means. Like I said, the difference between emergency era Indira Gandhi and Modi is that she had to declare emergency because a normal dictator and a fascist are very distinct. A normal dictator does what they want, and the people don't like it. On the other hand, what fascism does is they would be a dictator, but people would celebrate them. People would give them validation for everything they do. How they do that is their kernel, that is their class character, is made of upper caste, upper middle class, urban educated. That is it, core. And the interest they work for is the upper caste, super rich. That is the interest they work for. But they do mass mobilization by penetrating into all caste and class. That is what we call molecular permeation. Now, to do this at a national level, he has demonstrated that within a state. But state is not a unit with national, with economic sovereignty to decide economic policies and social policies on its own. As you know, India is a quasi-federal state. To launch it in a national scale, this all-caste permeating Brahmanical order into a fascist state, because to a fascist state, people keep saying TMC is fascist, DMK is fascist, all AAP is fascist, whatever is. Whenever they show some kind of dictatorship or some dictatorial tendencies or some sort of religious sentiment, the thing is, a fascist actually needs national sovereignty to implement their national project, because fascism cannot be implemented without making their own definition of who national citizen is, who is not. So to launch it to a national project, it is not only necessary that the leader is a non-Brahmin projected to be OBC. I'm not going to the validity of calling him an OBC, but also not just enough if they are included in the party or in the violence. It has to capture their imagination. It has to be part of their vision. They have to feel they are also part of this new order, what Romila Thapar calls syndicate Hindus. The order, caste order would be maintained, but they will all feel they are being part of the syndicate. So what triggered this was the global financial crisis after 2007. This brought a lot of economic problems in the everyday life. Now, when the price rises up, when there were slew of corruption charges, the India Against Corruption movement was its high. Modi was able to tap into the imaginations of vast majority of newly educated OBC, SCs, or other section of non-Brahmins who are first generation, second generation educated people, because there is an image that is built in India that the problems they face is not because of caste, but because of the superficial reasons of corruption, superficial reasons of malpractices by politicians, and all of that. Which is why, as opposed to Advani or Vajpayee, Modi was able to root himself deep into the Indian consciousness, run up to the elections of 2014. Because retrospectively, people easily think Modi came to power because of anti-Islam rhetoric or anti-Sonia Gandhi, anti-Rahul Gandhi rhetoric, but it wasn't the case. Modi was presented as a clean leader who would end corruption, who would end price rise, inflation, who would bring black money from Switzerland, Swiss banks and so on. And he would be what you call as CEO of India, the most efficient tech-savvy leader of India, who promises Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. It is not just the upper caste, upper class. It is a dream for everyone. Every caste can plant themselves in it. See, this is the image that was talking. For tech savvy, he was helped with, Hangout launch, uh, along with anchored by Ajay Devgan. And you would remember this. Are hum to fakir aadmi hain, jola leke chal padenge ji. He was positioned as a common man as opposed to Manmohan Singh, Narasimha Rao, Rajiv Gandhi, or whichever leader. Even if you take Vajpayee is always considered this pristine, very intellectual poet who is not a common man. But Modi's image was completely opposite of that. And we have to thank these bunch of NRIs. I mean, the first one is Rajiv Jain. Rajiv Jain was not technically an NRI. He was in the US for some years. But what more is important is the connections they have. He worked in the Prashant Kishore's team in 2014. This is Sadhvi Khosla. She was also an NRI who quit her job and came to India for 2014 campaign. Of course, a lot of you might know Rajiv Malhotra, who is an NRI living in New Jersey, who gave intellectual articulations for all this neo-castes or neo whatever Brahminical order that you would be reading from 2010 onwards. So Sadhvi Khosla was someone who was campaigning for Modi for 3 years before she got disillusioned because she was asked to design rape threats handling the IT wing. And Rajiv Jain was someone who was, handling all the voters' data. So what is important here is the image building of Modi, Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas for all class, wasn't just within India. It was massively powered by Western NRIs, especially from the North American. There is a study that says thousands of people took sabbatical in the US to work for the 2014 campaign in India. And one of the reasons was that the India Against Corruption movement had to have some sort of reception outside of India, in the intellectual circles in the US, in the newly joined IT youngsters in the US, and thousands of people like this worked from outside of India to this. Now, I'll just skip through this. Now, coming right after the victory, this molecular permeation within the caste had to be sealed with more payoffs for it. For example, when talking about, I'll just give two speech examples. From that, I'll go to the mechanism. I'll end with it and then talk about what we can do to dismantle this. When the Ujjwala scheme was launched, Modi's speech was that when I was a kid, my mother was struggling with 6 kids and a manual wooden stove. It was horrible to watch my mother struggle every day. And it is even more horrible that women of even today, after 60 years, have to struggle the same. So I am going to launch this scheme so that our sisters and mothers are liberated from it. And this is not some speech that you would listen to from Manmohan Singh or Rajiv Gandhi and so on. And again, the demonetization, post demonetization, he goes to Uttar Pradesh and speaks what I call up is down. He tells the poor people there, see, I have toppled the world. Have you ever spotted a rich man at your doorstep before? But now the rich men come to your house asking to exchange the notes, begging you for help in exchange for anything that you ask for. Have you ever even dreamed of such a world? But I have made it possible. Of course, the poor people would not know these are not the actual rich people. These are just the nearest possible rich people that they can encounter in their life. But what I said as capturing the imagination of the lower classes by extension, the caste in the lower rung of the ladder of caste ladder, Modi was successful with every scheme. What he was able to do with this was make caste horizontal, not vertical. The behavior of caste is always vertical, but through the mobilization and the campaign of BJP, what they were successful to do is, for example, when he talks about PM Awas Yojana or Ujwala or any other scheme, he tells people, see, when you go to an office, they don't ask if you're a Yadav. They ask if you're a beneficiary. What he does is, it is not Yadavs are getting oppressed by the caste above them, Yadavs oppress the caste below them. What happens is, the caste horizontally oppress Yadavs. For example, they consolidate all the OBCs that are not Yadavs against Yadavs. So the caste started, in at least the BJP's world, caste started operating horizontally. So for this, what they do is they find the term Sanjivani. Sanjivani, some of you might know, is a name for the medicine that is given to Lakshman when he was fighting for his life from Hanuman. So they name OBC representation as Sanjivani in internal communications between 2015 and 2018, especially for Gujarat. What they do, they take every state, they put matrix for whichever caste are represented by parties. For example, in Bihar, Kurmis are represented by JDU. Yadavs are represented by RJD. Now they take all castes except these Yadavs or Kurmis and consolidate them under BJP. For that, what they use is linguistic nationalism, the figures of linguistic nationalism. If you see linguistic nationalism pre-independence era or even post-independence era, where some sort of alternative for non-Brahmins as opposed to anti-caste movement and communist movement. One reason Periyar advocated for Tamil nationalism wasn't his, love for Tamil. He had no affiliations like that. It was just because he thought India keeps harboring caste. So when Tamil Nadu is still attached to India, it is impossible to annihilate caste. That was his logic. I mean, many linguistic national groups thought of such things. Of course, Periyar did not have a figure like Shivaji or Chola or Borfukan because Periyar did not have any affiliations to the feudal order. But most linguistic nationalist groups, you would see them revering some sort of hero from the past. These heroes were usually opposed to the hegemony of Delhi. That is what if you take Shivaji, that is a sign of Marathi pride, which means Marathis cannot be tamed under the hegemonical order of the Delhi. That is the same for Lachit in Assam. But these figures were turned into Hindu figures against whoever non-Hindus or whoever anti-caste figures that are against the social order that BJP is trying to build. With this, what they were able to do was, if you go back to the roots of linguistic nationalism, in most of the places, these are not done by, in most cases, Brahmins. Linguistic nationalist groups were predominantly non-Brahmins, landed caste or tenant caste from the rural areas. So when they tap into these figures, when they, for example, Modi keeps trying to woo supporters or followers of Chola with the same spirit. So when they give stories, when they give alternative narratives to each caste like this, if you take the study that is given in new BJP in Nalin Mehta, for the caste of Nishad, for the caste of Rajbar in UP, you take any number of castes from any region, BJP has given an alternative narrative, of course, scientifically studied by these people, passed on there by millions of WhatsApp groups, and the state funds they have. They were able to mobilize all of this caste into their order. Now, since we are running short of time, I'll just quickly slide through this. With this, what they did is molecular permeation does not mean just the caste. Molecular permeation actually means all spheres of life, including caste class, but institutions as well. Because they capture all the caste, because they capture all the regions and all the linguistic national imaginations, they were able to infiltrate all the institutions and the media, social media, public consciousness, and all that. Uh, how much time do I have left so that I can decide if I have to move on to the last part?
You're like 10 minutes, Mathur Sathya.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you see, when Ram Mandir was inaugurated, it wasn't Ram Mandir. It wasn't just Ram Mandir. It was Ram Temple Complex. The Ram Temple Complex had several deities in it. It still has. Not just Ram. There are multiple gods. These gods were representative of several social groups, that is, several caste locations. So the final seal of all castes coming together was sealed through Ram Mandir. Now, why we need to look at the global perspective, or why we need to look at what uh, is fueled outside of India, or how these things are linked up. Like I said, thousands of people took sabbatical to help the campaign. That is just electoral. But if you see overtly, even outside of India, the caste groups have been mobilizing in large numbers, and they have come up with strategies to counter it as Hinduphobia or culturalized caste in multiple different ways. Because what Fascism has done successfully is, let's take a very intellectual, educated castes like Subramanian, who once told Devilal that I am a Brahmin, you are not. So you are like a donkey to me, which I am allowed to ride you as I wish according to the scripts. This was something he said in a meeting, and he openly says that in a lot of interviews as a joke. Take someone who's very rural, who's not as illiterate as Subramanian is. For example, Ramesh Biduri, who's an MP in the northern part of India, who makes very casteist, sexist, vulgar remarks about Mayavadi. Modi's regime was successful in bringing these people together. And on the other hand, they were able to also bridge the gap between foreign university intellectuals and the local WhatsApp groups. Now, what, why these linkups matter are, what does these linkups have to do with caste? Now, if you see the recent narrative about caste that BJP is peddling, and it is also working to an extent, is that caste has been caste was in India for some other reason. It wasn't caste, it was jati. It was for a good reason. India was strong because of jati, and caste was invented by the colonial rulers. And so post-colonial means embracing our jati. So what was, when post-colonial was emerging in the 60s, it was basically a sort of progressive thing. Now, the postmodern, post-colonial from the academics of the West have been integrated with the Brahminical ideology, such a way that going back to your jati roots, upholding caste system, is opposing the colonially imposed fake modernity. That is the world we live in today. And it is no wonder, because of this, not just the NRIs that openly are casteist today, but also in India, you see rise in casteist attitudes, which is reflected in atrocities against Dalits. Not just Dalits, OBCs have been making a lot of noise, but their rights are getting stripped away one by one each day, and but they are not, they are not in a position to oppose this, because in their consciousness, their rights are not being taken away. They are actually being liberated. They they are being integrated into the mainstream Hinduism, and they have a place in taking the Hindutva project to the next step. Now, I will finish this in the last 3 minutes as to what we are staring at and what we can do and we must do. Uh, we have been doing a lot of things politically. You guys have Ambedkar things theory. I'm not saying what you should do or I should do. What generally we have been missing out throughout the world in combating this. There are several Marxist groups, terrorist groups, several progressive groups in India and abroad. We do a lot of political work. We do a lot of ideological work, and several groups like yours do it very efficiently, very thoroughly in the ideologies that they base their activities on. But if you actually see how these castes enter our circles of non-political people, it wasn't through political work. It wasn't through overtly political work. I'm not saying people should go undercover, but if you see, even in the USA that you operate, most of these castes got to our people through Bharatanatyam classes, Carnatic classes, Sattvic nutritionists, some sort of yoga trainers. I'm not saying these people come with an agenda of spreading this, but the sung throughout the world today has captured all the non-political spheres. It's not just in US or it's not just in UK. If you go to Chennai, most of the Silambam is an art form in Tamil Nadu, martial artists, martial art form. Most of the Silambam coaches tend to be someone from some sort of Hindutva background. If you go to musical spaces, if you go to theater spaces, a lot of influential groups are captured by these people. And most non-political people stay here. So slowly, these people are in the Hindutva project before they know they are in. Today, lots of words that you were able to utter 20 years ago, were able to talk openly, are like the words that you should not say, things that you should not name, because these non-political spheres have been captured. Through this, like I said, the molecular permeation is complete. One example I would give is, it's not just the non-political spheres as music, dance, or recreation, or painting, or whatever. Even if you take different varieties of profession. For example, why I wanted to show this judiciary thing was, the full penetration of judiciary is complete in lower courts, higher courts, Supreme Court, everything through a number of processes, which we don't have the time to elaborate. But this was possible because of ABAP, Akhil Bharatiya Adhivariksha Parishad. This is the legal front of RSS. One thing they do is, they offer internships to law students. The internship name, ironically, is Ambedkar internship program. ABAP offers some internship program in the name of Ambedkar to freshers out of law schools. And they get to work with the best of lawyers who would be on the backside, behind the screen, would be associated with the sun. Right now, the legal front of RSS declares that they have 20,000 lawyers in high courts across India. Do we have such a project? Do we have a non-political wing that would actively work towards capturing the musical scene, the theatrical scene, the law field, the legal field, finance, whatever, software, whatever? Do we have that? So until we aim to do this, because although the world is completely polarized today, it is also, completely, not completely, almost completely depoliticized. It is polarized on one hand, but it is very depoliticized on the other hand. You would find more youngsters in these depoliticized, non-political spheres rather than political organizations in college. Back in the 70s and 80s, people were part of the union. Today, there are no college unions. College students mostly spend time in these non-political spheres, and these non-political spheres happen to be run by all the Sangh affiliated organizations. So, unless and until we have an alternative, we provide an alternative. We won't combat casteism in the form that it exists today, and in the form it, transforms, in the form it moves from one place to the other, counters whatever democratic mobilizations that we do today. I think I have used all the time that I had, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, Satya.
Yeah, I think I would stop here for questions and conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Another powerful speech by Satya. It was very good. Before taking the questions, I would like to introduce about AKC to all of them. So AKC is a membership-based organization which aims to challenge all kinds of oppression, class, caste, race, religion, and gender. We believe that only such organization with a dedicated members can take our struggle forward. With that understanding, we plan a regular reading section, activity, and annual conference. This year, we have launched an anti-caste helpline to listen, provide support, and engage with empathy to anyone facing challenges in US and all around. We appeal to all to take this initiative to the masses, and I would like to announce and extend an invitation for AKC annual conference on 4th October this year. The conference is a great way to meet like-minded people and strategically strengthen and unite our force. Adding to that, we are stepping this year, like 10th year of AKC.